Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the November session of the Siam Society Literary Lounge. This month we are honored to welcome two speakers to the lounge, and I will introduce them shortly. The title of our conversation today will be Naimod's first printing of Three Seals Law in 1849 or 1850, many stories. Well, let me begin by being a little bit personal. The other day I was speaking to my friend, my undergrad friend, who married a Taiwanese. She lives in Taipei with her family. I told her that I would be moderating this session with Dr. Chris Baker and Professor Pasuk Phongpaichit as a speaker. My friend told me that, oh, names are very familiar. They must be somewhere on our reading list when we were at Thammasat. And she was right in a sense that I got to know the two names when I was an undergrad at Thammasat through the reading list of my Thai history teacher, Dr. Chanvit Kasetsiri. And the book he mentioned on the list was เศรษฐกิจการเมืองไทยสมัยกรุงเทพ which is one of the long book that I finished as an undergrad. And I remember quite rightly that the book began by mentioning something about Khun Chang Khun Pan to set the stage for Bangkok era. But what strikes and still strikes me was at the end. The epilogue, I think, which they refer to Phum Phuong Duang Chan, the death and the rebirth of Phum Phuong Duang Chan as a cult. That was something I'd like to mention because I think the two speakers this afternoon may not need a long introduction. And they are not no one to the Siam Society. They have spoken at the Siam Society many times. Dr. Chris Baker himself served as the honorary editor of the Journal of the Siam Society for more than a decade, I think, 15 years. That's the longest, continuous period since that position was made. The first one was George Sade in 1930s, if I'm not wrong. But then different individuals took turn to work on this capacity. But Chris Baker served for the longest period of time, continuing period of time. So it is, I think, interesting if there can be anyone studying the Journal of the Siam Society under his editorship. Well, I'm from the Department of Library and Information Science at Thammasat, so it's something rather familiar to me, to study journals, to examine particular characteristics of journals, academic journals or any journals during a period of time. So but still, I'd like to mention something about our speakers. Professor Pasuk Phongpaichit was a full-time professor at Chulalongkorn University, Faculty of Economics. She wrote many books on various subjects. I can remember something during my undergrad years as well. You wrote something about rent-seeking. The first Thaksin regime or something. And then Dr. Chris Baker worked in business before he retired and hop on, well, not hop, but step into work more with the work of the Siam Society, I think around the late 90s. And he helped publish many of our publications and eventually became the honorary editor of the Journal of the Siam Society. And together they wrote many books as well. One of the best-selling would be A History of Thailand by Cambridge University Press. I still have the first edition with me, and I took that copy with me when I went abroad for my master's degree at SOAS, University of London, and of course I had to ship it back when I graduated because I liked that first edition quite a lot. And they also wrote A History of Ayutthaya, also by Cambridge University Press, and also they edited many other volumes. And another thing, they both of them, together they received the Fukuoka Grand Prize for their contribution to the academia a few years ago. Well, I think probably that's about it. The introduction. Let us talk about the topic of today's literary lounge. Nine Modes, first printing of Three Seals Law. Of course, we will explain a little bit. The speakers will give you a bit of background in a moment. But my personal reading of the slides and also the other materials they mentioned in the articles, I think that the talk today will evolve around the subtitle, Many Stories, because Dr. Chris made it clear when he proposed this session that he found something and he was writing an article. They were writing an article on this to be published in JSS, which will appear soon. Then we are quite clear that the event, the incident is there, but they try to do a research on what happened and many other records. So I guess I get it right that you will be telling stories about this incident. Since I already mentioned that there are some keywords, but before we get to that keywords, which is the Three Seals Law, can you tell us a little bit about your interest? In the first place, why did you choose, or how how did you come to this topic? Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone.
That's all right.
Hello, everyone. Well, what we are talking about today is a spin-off from our translation of the Three Seals Law, which is already done and is in the process of publications. Okay, and today Chris would be the main speaker, and I may choose to answer some questions afterwards.
Right. Yes. We got interested in the Three Seals Law from writing about the history of Ayutthaya, because it's a quite extraordinary piece of source material. It's probably the biggest collection of laws found in Asia, right? And yet nobody uses it in writing the history. I mean, we used it a bit in our history of Ayutthaya, but you find anyone else in sort of trying to write general, it's very, very little indeed. So, and part of that reason is that it's quite difficult to read, and that, of course, it's in Thai, and so that we decided a few years ago we started translating it, and then just one thing led to another. Okay, fine. How do we get this onto my... Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. 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 So this is about an incident that happens right in the middle of the 19th century. And we can take it as being really an axial moment in the Siam's approach to modernity, because particularly because it involves printing, which is such an important aspect of modernity. And the talk is about two or three different things. One is it's about finding a document. It's about finding in Paris a document that wasn't supposed to exist, okay? Partly then it's about sources and stories. There are many different stories about this incident, but when you look at them, and I'll do it in a minute, what is striking is they've got no referencing. Where this information came from is completely vague. Okay? And I suppose then the third important point to us is about this man, Mot who becomes the family, Amatyakul family, who is, as we will see, an absolutely extraordinary man, but who gets very little mention in the histories at all. We hear an awful lot about some other characters, like Jaupia Tipakorowang, or Gulab, or King Mongkut himself. But this guy, as we will see, is quite remarkable, gets almost no mentions at all. So it's really about this combination of things. Yeah, okay, that one. Okay, so let me first explain, so we're all in the same place, what is the Three Seals Law. And it starts in 1805, when King Rama I orders the scribes to collect together everything they can find about law-related stuff in the archives, and to make a fair copy of this to be used for assistance in the judicial process from then on. It's often referred to as a code, as if it's rewritten. It's not. It's basically just a fair copy of what they could find. Then in 1849-50, this young Thai nobleman, Mot, he had it printed, and King Rama III objected and had it seized and supposedly destroyed. Okay? A few years later, the missionary Dan Beach Bradley, he did print the whole thing, and it became an enormously successful, used by lawyers from then onwards. Most of it later, in fact, printed in the government gazette, okay, and is a sort of classic work. Then towards the end of the century, there are several other versions. There's particularly a version done by Prince Ratburi, who was King Chulalongkorn's son, who was deputed to look after law as part of as part of the Fifth Reign reforms, and he did some very interesting editing on it. And then the classic edition, the Thammasat University edition, which is published in the 1930s and then is reprinted both by Kuru Supa and by the Fine Arts Department. And that picture shows our copies of it. All the books, through having used in this translation, have fallen apart and been put together with glue. Okay, so. And then finally in 2007, it was supposed to be on the 200th anniversary in 2005. It got a bit late. The Royal Society, Raja Pandit, they printed an edition, this huge edition. There's a copy of it over here. And some of these other ones I've just mentioned, there are copies in the Siam Society collection, but they're in the rare books department, so they're on display upstairs at the moment. What is important about this one is that as part of it, there is a photograph of every single page from the 1805 collection. So whereas everything in between, there's been a certain amount of intervention, if you like, and things got changed a little bit. With this one, we can actually go back to the original and we know what it said. So that is what we have used for our translation. Now, I'm going to have to think how to do this, because at the moment I can't. Okay, I'm going to have to read. Okay, now this is really where I come into this. This is from Yonio Ishii's very famous and wonderful 50-page summary of the whole Three Seals law, which was done 40 years ago. And in that, he says, at this time, a progressive-minded young nobleman, Mot, attempted the first printing of the Three Seals law. However, it made the kings angry, and he ordered the confiscation of the printed laws to be destroyed by fire. And today, there is only one volume of the first of the two volumes left in the National Library. Okay? Now, others have written about this. Jean Burnay, who is the Frenchman who was involved in the creation of the Thammasat University edition, he says more or less exactly the same thing, and so does Robert Lingat, who also involved in that. And Prince Damrong wrote about it. He wrote about it in his San Somdet, in his correspondence with Prince Narit, but also in his correspondence with Paya Anuman separately, almost the same thing. And he says more or less the same thing. King Rama III got very angry, and there must be an order to seize all the manuscripts and all the printed books. There are some other, Chai Rengsin writes about it, Walter Weller writes about it, and all mostly saying the same thing. What is striking about these? Not one of them has a footnote. Not one of them shows the source of where this information has come from. And then when you look at them in detail, you will find there are slight differences in the stories that are being told. So the beginning of this story is, sorry, Jack? Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, and so what has grown up around this has been something of a debate about controversy of exactly why it is that the king had these things seized. And because we don't actually have any source material for this, that these opinions tend to rather reflect the people who wrote them rather than anything else. So Ishii says it was because the laws were considered sacred and therefore ordinary people weren't allowed to look at them. This is actually completely wrong. We have found lots and lots of copies of these laws. From the late Ayutthaya period onwards, there was a process of having these copied so litigants would be able to have access to the law. So Ishii sort of got it wrong. Lingat says because Mot didn't ask for permission. Damrong, because the laws would get misused by people trying to cheating on the system. Smith just said because this king was backward-looking and didn't like innovations from the West. And Tanet, who is here, said it's because the king took this opportunity to punish the missionaries and the Westerners who had just arrived in Siam for other offences that they have done. So as you see, a big range of different interpretations of why this incident happened. Now, there is, however, this book, which is a book published in 1883, which is a catalogue of books and manuscripts available at that time in the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris. Okay? And in that book, there is a page, there's number 30 in the list, which says Recueil des lois siamoises, printed in our year. And it says, in 1849, a young Thai nobleman had them printed and the king had them seized. Okay? So it has the story. Okay, it has the story. Okay, but when I looked at this first, I thought, but surely, if they had a copy of this book that's not supposed to exist, if they had it in Paris, surely the French scholars would have found it. I mean, Jean Burnay or Lingat or their successors would have found this book. And so they would have written something about it. So it must be something wrong. It must be fake. This must be fake news. So earlier this year, I mentioned this thought to Gregory Korulski, who I hope would be here today, but who is the EFEO man here at the moment. And I said this is rather strange that there is this mention of this book, and surely someone would know about it. And Gregory said, well, I have a friend who works in the Bibliothèque Nationale de Paris, so why don't we try him? So as a result of this, a month later, this appears in my inbox, which is a scan of this book, 330 pages of this book from the Bibliothèque Nationale. And it translates that, and this is the cover page of Naimot's 1849-50 edition of the Three Seals Law, which is supposed to be only in one copy in the National Library. Okay? So that was the start of us beginning to think about that. And then I thought, well, if this part of the story is wrong, what else about it is wrong?
Very interesting discovery. I think many of us will have more or less the same question in mind at the moment. But I think Chris will explain that in the next section. The question is, what was the impetus for Naimot to have the laws copied and printed? So I think let us move on to the next part to get to know more about Naimot.
Okay.
Please.
Oh, okay. Naimot, okay. He is, as Ishii said, a really quite remarkable figure, and he's remarkable in many ways. The first off, he's remarkable for his family. Now, the family by origin is Chinese. Chinese come to Siam. And when these families generally write their family histories, they start off with the original ancestor who came from China to Siam. That's the standard way these histories are written. In the Amatyakul family histories, no way. There's no mention of this original ancestor at all. Okay? The entire stories are about how they became good Thai Kunang, good Thai nobles, completely and totally. His father, Phaya Maha Amat, was originally a recruitment official who, during the war with Vientiane, with Chao Anu in the 1820s, got lucky, finished up being a general and became very rich. Okay? His mother is daughter of Jaisua, one of the leading Chinese traders who also has an official position in the royal warehouse. His wife is a daughter of the Choduk, which is one of the leaders of the Thai Chinese community, and also comes from the Gaire family, which is another of these Chinese origin families that became successful in Siam very early on. So his pedigree is quite extraordinary. Plus that, he grows up just outside the Bangkok Palace around Paktong Dalat. And so he's moving with royalty from his childhood. When he is briefly ordained as a novice, he's ordained in Wat Pragao inside the royal palace. Right? So he's right up there, although he goes to stay in a Wat in Klong San after that. But that's half of why he's remarkable. The other half is that he, early on, from the time he's a mid-teenage, he makes a point of befriending the Westerners who are turning up in Siam at this period for the first time. So he gets to know Bishop Palagua, Bradley, Caswell, Chandler, all these people rather well. And what he turns out to be is a very naturally talented engineer come scientist. Okay? So famously, he makes his own lathe. Think about that. How do you make your own lathe when there's no materials around to do so? He was good at electricity. He did electroplating. He did chemistry and medicine. He invented a patent medicine that was supposed to cure everything. And then from the chemistry, he got into photography, and then photography also into printing. So an amazing array of these talents when he's still a very young man. Now he becomes a royal page, which anyone from his sort of family would become in his mid-teens. But then he doesn't progress up the official hierarchy at all under the Rama III. And I think that's because he is associated with the other people who are befriending the Westerners, getting interested in Western knowledge, these people who become young Siam a little bit later on. And I think Rama III is very leery of these people, so he doesn't promote him up the hierarchy, so he remains very junior. Now, the family, Amatyakul family, have produced several histories. Okay? The first one, as far as I can see, is this one produced in 1964, collected by Tri Amatyakul, who was a famous man in the fine arts department. Okay? Then there's another one that appeared in 1977, which I haven't found. But the 1986 one, the pink one, is supposed to be just a reprint of that one. These are very difficult, quite difficult to find. The first one you can find, it's in Thammasat. These other ones are very difficult to find. And luckily, at some point, we discovered we had a friend who was an Amatyakul, and we rang her up and said, "Do you happen to have any of these books?" And she did, so which is how we got into this stuff. Anyway, in this third one, the pink one, published in 1986, it has in it a chapter which is a memoir by Naimot. Okay? And it's a very strange piece of work. It's 28 pages long. And the beginning of it, this is a book produced largely for the family. It's about the family. It's all about his relatives, the houses they live in, and what they get up to. And he uses the family nicknames all the time, so we can't tell who any of these people are. It's a very strange book. And he has almost nothing about his own early life, his extraordinary life. And he does a little bit about meeting some of the foreigners, but actually almost nothing at all. Until the very last page, page 28, which tells about this story of printing the Three Seals Law and it being seized, which is the only bit which is sort of historical outside the family of the whole book, which is very strange, isn't it? So in the article we've written out, we've translated this page in total. And it starts like this. He says he got interested in the laws because there was an inheritance dispute in the family. Uncle Praglin is like his adoptive grandfather. And he was a very, very rich man. He was a Prapi Liang to King Mongkut when he was in the monkhood. And it said that his household had 250 servants. So, rich man. So he sent someone in, he got the scribes in the Rongalak to copy the laws. And instead of only copying just the inheritance law, he somehow got to copy the lot, which is difficult to explain, isn't it? Okay? And then he said, having read these laws, he could see that people who didn't have access to these laws were in difficulty, so it would be a public service to print them. Besides which, he had invested money in getting the scribes to copy them, and this would be a way for him to recoup that capital. So, he sort of gets into this whole business sideways. So I commissioned a missionary doctor to print 200 copies for a cost of 500 baht, and he printed one volume only, and then things went wrong. Okay? So, when James Brooke came to Siam, and this is James Raja Brooke from Sarawak, and in 1850, the British government in London commissioned Raja Brooke to come to Siam to negotiate a trade treaty, basically to try and negotiate the treaty that Bowring did negotiate 5 years later. Okay? But Rama III was having nothing at all to do with this, so he just stonewalled Brooke and his people from the word go. But this had a knock-on effect. And rumours started going round that Brooke had got his information that he was using in negotiation by talking to the missionaries in Siam and so on and so forth, and talking to the people who were associated with Prince Mongkut in the monkhood. So some friends of Mongkut got worried about this, and they went along and finished up with Naimot having to go to the palace, right? And he says, the king ordered Gwamluang Wongsa, who's a half-brother of Mongkut, and Phongpaichit, I'm not sure, to bring me and the employees of the missionaries to be questioned about events, and then to bring the laws that I had made at the doctor's printing works, and said that when the jedi was made at Wat Saget, to have them buried there. Now this is very strange. This is very, very strange indeed. This is very strange because Wat Saget, the mound, this is Pukao Tong, the edge of Ratanakosin Island. This had been a prestige project for Rama III, which had gone very badly wrong. When they started to try and build this thing, because it was on this very marshy ground. Ed Van Roy is here, and he's been researching this, so he may talk a bit more later. It kept collapsing, okay? So, and this picture, which is a little bit later, this is, I think, in the early 1860s, you can see it's basically been abandoned, and it's getting overgrown. One of the nice factors is that this picture was taken by Naimot as well, okay? So eventually, the design had to be changed, and it went from this sort of ziggurat style here, right, to this, Museum of Modern Art, curly style here, and eventually, of course, comes to one that we know today. But at the point we're talking about, at the end of Rama III's reign, it's a disaster. So the idea that he would order these books to be put inside this jedi is very, very strange indeed. Okay? Going on from that, shortly after this, as we shall see, Rama III dies. He dies in the middle of this. And King Mongkut comes to the throne, and according to Naimot, he says, fine, these laws are of use to the kingdom. He gives them back to Naimot, and he is able to sell them. Okay? So we just see, here we have a rather different story to the one that was being told by Ishii and Burnay and Lingat and Damrong. Okay? So in a sense, we now have to ask, what of this is true and how could we find out?
So from Naimot's memoir, he mentions in details about the printing, right? But still, is there anything about the impetus or the objective why he had the laws copied in the first place?
Well, as he says, he did it because his family was involved in a court case over a very valuable inheritance. But why he would have copied the whole laws rather than just the inheritance law is not clear at all. Right? I mean, this is the point. You can say that, okay, we've got Mot's memoir, he's the guy involved, and he tells us this, end of the story. But because it's such a strange document, because it has this very strange thing about burying them in Wat Phu Khao Thong, you don't necessarily believe it 100% at that point. Right?
And another minuscule point is just out of my curiosity, how much 100 baht would cost today?
I've got it. I mean, it works out. I think the total he invested is something like 12, would be equivalent to about $12,000 today, roughly that.
You mean including the printing or just?
Yes, no, including the printing. Yeah, yeah, so it's quite a lot. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Sorry, I'd forgotten the figure. It's in a footnote in the JSS article. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so the question is, can we find out more by trying to find any other contemporary sources which bear upon this? And here, then, what we have is that they're Europeans. They come from the missionaries and they come from the diplomats who are involved. And the most important one of these is Dan Beach Bradley's diary or journal. He kept a journal all the time. He didn't write it up as a daily diary, occasionally wrote it up, and he writes about things that are happening to himself and happening to the mission. Okay? And he writes, and this is on 3rd of September 1850, this is when Raja Brooke has arrived in Bangkok to negotiate with Rama III's government, and it creates a panic, okay, as Mot has already told us. And what happens is that the Thai who are working with the missionaries get frightened that they're going to be jailed, basically, for having taught the Pali language and Thai culture to the missionaries. This is the rumor. And in fact, one or two of them do get arrested, but we don't know quite how much happened to them. But he also says, I learned that Kun Mot was in danger from having ventured to print the Siamese laws, which work is now on the press at the Baptist mission. One thing to mention about this before all, everyone else says that Bradley printed these laws. Bradley says no, that it was printed at the mission, the Baptist mission down the road, right? And no one else seems to have got this at all. And in fact, then the Baptist missionary mission also, they have an international journal. Oh, sorry, it gets a bit further. Okay. So at that point, Bradley, when he's worried what's going to happen to these Thai who are working with the mission, he goes to see his best friend in the palace entourage, which is Gwamluang Wongsa. And Gwamluang Wongsa tells him that the king was not displeased with the persons who had... the king was not fed up with the missionaries or anything like that. He was displeased only with the persons who had undertaken to publish the laws of this country and sell them. We'll come back to this line a little bit later. But Gwamluang Wongsa said, don't worry about it, because, sort of nothing bad has happened yet. And in fact, Gwamluang Wongsa is correct. The thing from then on starts to calm down. Now, the Baptists, also they have a publication which they get occasional missives sent in from their missions all around the world, and they print them in this magazine. In July 1850, just before this, they reported that a Siamese nobleman is printing the laws. And a little bit later, in October, they said, yes, the printing has been done, and it's done by Kun Mot, a young Siamese nobleman of much promise and talent. And in their accounting from the printing office, they say he printed 125 copies. Again, a discrepancy. Mot said 200. And that the total number of pages is 32,000, which would not work because it's 330-page book, so 32,000 wouldn't even be 100 copies. Okay, so the figures don't add up. More discrepancies here and there. Okay? But then another event intervenes to make this more exciting. And this is a picture of, a little bit earlier than this, in 1839, of the office of the Baptist mission. And just after this, in fact, on 4th of January 1851, it's burnt to the ground. Okay? And it's burnt by arson. Someone sets it on fire by an incendiary. And it burns everything, including the printing office, 2 printing presses, 8 fonts of types, a type foundry, a book bindery, and all the paper that was in there. Okay? Now, this is intriguing in a couple of ways. It's intriguing. First is, was this somehow connected to the printing of the laws? And we don't know. There's nothing to tell us. Bradley reports that the man who did it was a Siamese official who had a personal dispute with someone inside the mission. But it's just a one-line comment, and I haven't found any other information to bear upon this. And that, in fact, no other information seems to come to light after this. Now, when we got the Paris library to make a scan of Naimot's book, they, thank goodness, scanned also the letter that is slipped inside the book, right? Which is this one, okay? Which is 2 pages written in French. And what it says is, in 1849, a young Siamese Mandarin, blah, blah, blah. What that is, this is where this thing in the 1883 book comes from. It's word for word the same, and it's what is still in the catalogue entry in Bibliothèque Nationale de Paris. Okay? So this account comes from whoever put this letter. It comes from this letter that was written and put inside the book when it was sent to Paris. And at the top of this letter, and also at the top of the first page of the book, there is some extra writing put in there. And the top one, it says, these notes were written by the Abbé Clemenceau, the apostolic missionary to Siam, and that's signed by de Montigny. And the second one on the book says, presented to the Bibliothèque Impériale by Abbé Clemenceau, the missionary, and also signed by Montigny. Okay? So who are these people? Well, Clemenceau, he was a French missionary in Siam. He arrived in 1833. 1853, when Palagois wrote his description, he was number 2 to Palagois in the mission. He succeeds him as head when Palagois dies in 1862, and then he dies in Bangkok in 1864. Now, you will see here that he was actually away on leave from 1848 to 50. So he wasn't actually in Siam when the incident happened, but he was there soon afterwards. So what do we know about him? And Leah Genovese gloriously helped me to find this from the French Historical Archives, that in the history, the account of this man's history, it says, in 1855, at the time of the journey of the visit to Siam by the French ambassador de Montigny, Clemenceau gave Montigny a copy of the laws which had been printed, and Montigny sent it to Paris to the Foreign Office, where it was gladly received. So we hear the story, isn't it wonderful? It adds up completely. It adds up. You know, we now know how this thing, we know it went to Paris then quite early on, quite soon after our incident in 1849 to 1850. And who is Montigny? He was a leading French diplomat, spent most of his time in China and bought an awful lot of Chinese artifacts which are in museums in France. But he came to Bangkok on his way to China in 1856 as a special ambassador to negotiate the French version of the Bowring Treaty. Okay? And there's this very grand portrait of him, here he is down here, being presented to Moncourt. I have no idea where this painting comes from, but there's a few copies on the web. I haven't been able to work out where it comes from yet. Okay. So the story, now, we can see it sort of adds up together, right? We can see that, as Mot said, it clearly wasn't all burned, okay? So the French missionary was able to get at least one copy, and it was sent to Paris, and therefore it survives for us.
It is quite interesting here, as you do this research and you found out that how a copy arrived at the French National Library. Well, I'm sure initially quite by chance, but then, you know, it's quite wonderful that we get this piece of information. And also, as you mentioned just now, that it may not be true that the whole lot was burned, because at least there is another one survived, right? So you would think otherwise. I mean,
I'm inclined to agree or credit when Naimot says that Moncourt gave him them all back and he sold them. I think it's quite likely. Yeah.
Right. So I think we get to another part, because now we know that well, we do not know, but we can imagine that there might be some more copies with somebody else, maybe in private collections or you know, somewhere. But we still need to do deeper research on that. But then the next question would be about the aftermath of well, the printing and also the rediscovery of the copy in France.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this last bit is what happens after this event. So it's partly what is the impact on the Three Seals law, okay, and what is the impact on Naimot and his family in the longer term. So first, about the Three Seals law. And this is Naimot's edition on the left, and this is Bradley, and there's a copy upstairs here, Bradley on the right here. So what is interesting, I mean, everyone sort of believes that Bradley somehow did this with Naimot. He was part of this sort of young Siam thing at the beginning to print the laws. But actually the story is some little bit different. When Bradley, at the end of the 1840s, he changed from one mission organization to another one in the US. And the second one didn't give him anywhere, the financing was much lower than it had before, so he was strapped for cash. However, because the Baptist Mission Press has been burnt to the ground, there is an opportunity in printing. So he develops his press as a profit center for the mission. So instead of just printing, you know, bits of the Christian Gospels, which is what he'd been doing up till then, he starts the Bangkok calendar, which of course many of us know as an annual yearbook, which was extremely successful. He prints a primer, a book to teach kids Thai. He prints Nirat London, one of the first poems written around this time. He prints a copy of the Ayutthaya Chronicles. And he has, as it were, a kind of bookshop in the press, and where people come, and he reports in his diary at one point that people started asking him for the laws, because probably copies of Naimot's edition were circulating around, and other people wanted to get them. So Bradley recognized that there was an opportunity, as part of his commercialization of the press, to print the laws. So he immediately does start printing the laws, and it is enormously successful. So that's one part. The second part is, we can see now we have both these editions, that all of the work was done by Naimot, not by Bradley. Right? That Bradley's edition is basically a copy of Naimot. Okay? And we see this, for instance, from where there are mistakes in Mot's edition, which are reproduced in Bradley, which are not there in the original manuscripts. So, for example, here, this here, he has just, the scribe has just copied out the law on abduction. He gets to the end, and he starts copying the division of persons, Bam Panek, out. Okay? And he gets through 2 pages of that. And I think at that point someone taps him on the shoulder and says, "Mate, you're doing the wrong thing. We've already printed that one. You've already copied this one further up." So he stops dead and moves in the middle of a paragraph and goes on to the slavery law. Okay? And this is yes, here. There, the division starts and slavery begins. Okay? And this is exactly the same in Bradley. I mean, it could only happen because Bradley has copied. No, there's no other way. And there's several others. This is the biggest one, the most obvious one, but there are several others. Now, I mean, how did he do this? Well, for the first volume, he could have just copied from Naimot's printed volume, but Naimot's second volume was never printed. However, when the Rama III had the book seized, he also seized the manuscripts which Naimot had copied in the scribes' hall. Okay? The whole lot, a complete set of the law copied by the scribes, was seized in 1850 and carried away to the palace, and now it's still in the Thailand National Library. It's still there. They're still there. And they're called the Rabat Gasab, okay, the seizure of Gasab's manuscripts. And I actually haven't been to see them, but luckily Ajahn Pira has been looking at these manuscripts, and he has got scans of most of them, and he very kindly gave this to me. This one is done in beautiful scribal hand, but some of them are more scribbly, apparently. I haven't really seen them. So we now know, in fact, there's a nice irony on this, is that the only reason we have them is because Rama III had them seized, otherwise they'd have been burnt. In fact, yes, the whole thing has got a nice series of ironies in there. Okay, then what happened with Naimot and his family? You may have noticed, I forgot to draw attention to it, Clemenceau, the missionary, is the only one of these accounts who says that Naimot was put in jail in 1850 as part of this punishment by Rama III. No one else confirms this, but it seems to be quite likely. Anyhow, King Mongkut rehabilitated him pretty quickly, promoted him to the rank of Pra, and he was employed as the government engineer, because he's a very talented man. Then in 1860, King Mongkut wants to set up a mint, because following the Bowring Treaty, trade is increasing, they need currency. He orders a coin printing machine from London, which is sent along with 3 engineers, arrives in 1860, and within a matter of weeks, all 3 of the engineers die. So he entrusts the project to Naimot, who very successfully sets up the mint. This is the mint. This is what it looked. It was inside the palace. And from then on, of course, he prospers. He is employed to set up a gasworks in the palace, to do metal casting for the navy, for making ships, and to run a gold mine in down in Bujinbury. Okay, and his favour continues into the 5th reign. King Chulalongkorn raises him to the rank of Paya Gathap Git Goson, a name invented which means clever at making coins, which is rather nice. He becomes a councillor of state and a privy councillor. This puts him right at the top of the Kunnang hierarchy. Right? There's only a handful of privy councillors, very big. This shows him with Prince Alangkot. Okay? But then, of course, and he trains up his 3 sons to be his successors. They all learn the same technical skills that he has learned, and they go with Rama V. When Rama V goes to visit India and to visit Java, they go in with the title in English as Superintendent Engineer. Okay? But then, of course, things start to go wrong again. The first son, Sam'an, he does very successfully. He takes over running the mint. He takes over running the gold mine. He's elevated to the title of Preacher Golaga. But at this point, things get very complicated because in the court of the young King Chulalongkorn, there's immense rivalries, particularly between the Bunak family and the Amatyakul family. I'm not going to say too much about this. Simon Landy is here, and he's been looking at this, so he may come in later. But anyway, in March 1879, Sam'an marries Fanny, the daughter of the British consul. This sparks fly. 16 days later, he's accused of corruption and abuse of labour in gold mining. On 22nd November, he's sentenced to death. He's put in a boat, ferried out to Prachinbury, and 2 days later, he's executed by being beheaded outside Wat Luang Prichagun here in Prachin, and the people tell us that this is the spot where he was executed. And this is the ordination hall that he had built himself. However, he does not then, as it were, vanish from history, but continues in a most interesting way. This is aerial shot of Prachinbury, and this here is the Wat Luang Prichagun, and the X there is the spot where he's supposed to have been executed. Then just across here, up here, and this is the main road going through the centre of Pachin. The sort of Dalat is up here. They build a shrine to him. Well, it's not very clear when the first shrine was built. And the first one is supposed to have been a sort of rather rustic shrine, looking something like this. But that deteriorated, and some time later they built a much more solid shrine that continues to this day. And it is, as you see, it has written on it, San Jiaopo Sam'an. Okay? Shrine of Godfather Sam'an. And Godfather here doesn't mean gangster. It means a local spirit lord. He's become a protective spirit of the locality. And this shrine is very popular. It's very offerings, particularly young men when they're going to be ordained into the monkhood. It's traditional for them to come and make offerings here, and of course also for lottery tickets and all the usual stuff. And more recently, they've built a second shrine, which is in the back of the Wat here, which has a statue, not quite like life-size, of him too, apparently financed by the Amatyakul family. Okay? And the family, however, again, this disaster was only somewhat temporary. Mot and his other 2 sons were jailed, stripped of their property, and and everything. But after some time, it's not quite clear how long, they were rehabilitated, and the other two sons continued to do very well. So this photo shows a royal gatin by Benshai in 1905, and this is the second son, and he's just standing next to Prince Narit, and these are various other very high nobility here. This photo was in the exhibition of glass plate photos at BACC earlier this year. Okay, so the one thing that is still left is this question of why it was that the king ordered these books to be seized and apparently to be destroyed. There is no mention of the seizure in the Reign Chronicle by Jaupaya Tipakorowang, none at all. No mention of this incident at all. Where's View gone? Where's he gone? Okay. A friend of ours went into the manuscript collection in the National Library, went searching for 2 weeks of all the documents from the end of the Rama III reign. There is no sign of an order, okay, to seize the books or anything else at all. And I think the best explanation is that the order was given orally, but it never went down on paper. And you can see, look, if you look at the chronology here, this whole thing, which blows up in July, August, September 1850, we know from the Chronicle that the king fell ill in August, and from then onwards only very occasionally attended audience. And from then onwards, there's only one, in the Chronicle, in the Tipakorowang's Chronicle, there's only one thing that the king is recorded as doing from that time onwards, and that's making some intervention in the succession. There's nothing else of activities. So he's pretty much incapacitated from then. Bradley reports in 9 January that he gets worse, and on 2nd of April he dies. So he sickens right in the middle of Brooke's visit and the panic blowing up here, and the Wang Sa's visit to see him in the palace. So I think he gave the order orally, and it was transmitted in various ways, but it never put down on paper before he was incapacitated. And so now, of course, someone still may find it later, but I think that's the best explanation for the moment. Okay, so where we go? Yes, and then the Baptist mission fire is there. So we are left with these different opinions on why the king did this. I think there's one piece of information in these contemporary documents which I think we can look at, and that is the king's words as reported back to Bradley by Gwamlul Wang Sa, where he said the king was displeased with the persons who had undertaken to publish the laws of the country and to sell them. Right? So a quick way to sum it up is this is a copyright issue. Okay? That these are, the king could rightly say, these are government documents, and they were put together by my father. Right? So I could, in a sense, if you had the modern terminology, you could claim some kind of copyright, that anyone who wants to use them should ask permission and probably share some part of the profit. Whereas you can say that Naimot was working on the assumption that these were in the public domain. Okay? Right? Now what this indicates, of course, and what you must remember is what we're talking about there. You can, I think, say this book was the first printed book in Thai. Right? I mean, there are missionary pamphlets and other things, but any book before this, I'm not really sure. Tanet should know better than I do. But it's the first book, and the first banned book, and the first ban that didn't work, which I think quite nice indeed. Okay, I've got a bit of conclusion.
Well, we have gone almost full circle, which, of course, Chris will make it full. But let me get back to the very first point that you began early on. So you have made it quite clear that there might be, the printed laws would survive, right? But so my question is that where did Ishii get the idea?
Yeah. I mean, where did Ishii and Damrong and Burnay and Lingat, where did they get this idea from? Yes, we don't know. I mean, I think it's these ways that many stories from Thai history get passed on by word of mouth, and of course get changed by that transmission. But just reproduced all the time, and I've reproduced Ishii. Yeah, so only to find out, of course, it's not so. Yes.
So this is a good example of how narratives can deviate from what actually happened.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So right. In the end, I mean, well, I also I'm going back to the starting point because I mentioned early on that Ajahn Pasuk, Chris and Ajahn Pasuk are writing an article, so he will talk a bit about the article.
Yeah, okay. Just first, it's really that reflecting on this document, Naimot's edition, and so I have given this scan to this library and to Thammasat. And also, as soon as I'd paid for it, the Bibliothèque Nationale put it up on their website. Well, good for them. That's right. So, but I mean, what really is the sort of upshot of doing this research? I mean, in partly it has corrected some of the story. Okay, that almost certainly that they weren't burnt. I think probably none of them were ever burnt. Okay, it wasn't. Bradley's involvement is much less than we see from most of these accounts. Prince Damrong, if you go back to that account, says the whole thing was Bradley's idea, and he got Mot to do it. Which is clearly Bradley actually wasn't in Thailand, wasn't in Siam when the whole thing happened. He'd gone on leave in the US. So I think it's okay, there's some corrections to the story, but also more mysteries introduced too, because bringing in particularly the fire at the Baptist mission raises a lot of queries that are very strange. I think partly this, I hope, shows how important this man Mot is. But also I think what this shows is the way that people like him, who are, if you like, the pioneers of modernity in Thailand, in Siam. And he in particular, his involvement with printing, which is such an important part of modernity. And the way that his confrontation of risk and reward in his history, the fact that he has this sort of strange childhood, then becomes enormously successful after the mint, then crash, and so on. His pendulum is really going up and down indeed. And that is, I think, important for us to realize there are kind of personal and intimate stories in this history of modernity or Siam grappling with modernity, which are often somewhat under the surface. Okay, and lastly, I want to say that to me, what is perhaps extraordinary is that we wrote this article, and this presentation, by hardly moving from this chair. Okay, that I came here for a couple of visits for books here. But basically, although this is using documents that come from France, Siam, UK, US, okay, and from many different periods, was able to get them either through online availability or particularly through the help of friends. So Gregory and his friend Jérôme in the bibliothèque were able to help me get the copy of the volume. The friend we found from the Amatyakul family got these copies for us. Pira got the things. Ajahn View, who is here, went into the National Library and looked at the manuscripts. And I don't have to only thank him, I have to thank Donald Trump, because Ajahn Parkpoom one morning was happily working for USAID and afternoon was unemployed and available to help me. So thank you, Donald Trump, for that. And Leah here, who is very skilled in the use of the French archives, I emailed her and said, is there any way we can find out about these missionaries? And she was, I think, sitting in an airport lounge in Doha. Yes. And just half an hour later, she comes back with it, with this link which tied up the whole story. Okay, Matt and Lara Unga. Getting copies of Bradley's calendar and so on is quite difficult. I have some, but not others. There are copies in US, microfilms in US libraries, particularly in Michigan, and I could get to it online, but then it said you can only have access to this if you are a registered member of Michigan University. Then I remembered that 15 years ago, after we did Kunchan Kumpen, we did a tour in the US and we did a presentation in the Michigan University Library, and the lady who hosted it was called Lara Unga. So I Googled her, looked her up, and well, not only is she still there, but she's in charge of the digital collections. So she was able to send me all this stuff, which I wasn't supposed to have from the library, okay? And then Simon here, one of these Amatyakul memoirs, one of them, the most latest one, quite extraordinarily, the only place I could find a copy available in a library was in the Australian National Library in Canberra. However did it get there and nowhere else? So Craig Reynolds went to get that for me. And then Ed Van Roy, Kem Tong, Tamara Luce have helped. And also the Temple Committee of Wat Lung Prichakun, because our last piece of luck was turning up there to go and look at these shrines. We get out the car, we ask a monk, where do we go to look? And he said, oh, you're in luck. They're just starting the monthly meeting of the Temple Committee. Here they are. Why don't you talk to them? So they took us round and gave us all the stories. So there's an awful lot of luck that came into this, indeed. So this is it. The article is done. It's in the next JSS, which will come out in a few weeks' time. Thank you very much.
Well, you talked about having paid for a copy. Then the National Library put it up online. That happened to me also with the British Library. I was asking for a scan of a thesis. It seemed that they were waiting for someone to pay for the scanning. So when I paid for the scanning and I got a copy, then they put it up online. So somehow you did it for the humanity as well. We have eventually come full circle with the mention of the article, which will come out in a few weeks' time. Although, of course, Chris has told us the stories, I still feel that there are more details which we can read for ourselves. So check JSS next month. So now we open the opportunity up for the questions or comments from the audience. There are some microphones, so can you just raise your hand so that the microphone will go to you? We have enough
Thank you,
time.
Jan. First of all, I would let me introduce myself. I'm Pachari Thachat, a lecturer from Faculty of Arts, Chulalongkorn University, and I'm actually the 8th generation of the Amatyakul family. And actually, Nai Mot, he's a father of my great grandfather. First of all, I would like to thank professors to broaden the vision with the new things, apart from talking, repeating only the, Phongpaichit issue, something like that. So it's the new, for me, the new border. It's really, really interesting. But let me add you, let's see, the information a little bit about the previous 2 generations before the 3rd generation, พระยามหาอมาตย์ป้อมนะคะ Actually, the Amatyakul family, according to Professor Phongpaichit, Dr. Phongpaichit Amatyakul, he already re-edited the new version. If Ajahn would like to get it, I could offer you the new version as well. Last year, if I'm not wrong. And also, actually, we serve the Amatyakul family served since the reign of Ayutthaya พระเจ้าอยู่หัวบรมโกศ if I'm not wrong, from can I count in 18 something? Yeah, yes. This is the thing that I would like to offer Ajahn ค่ะ the new edition of the Amatyakul book. Probably you might get something more interesting, the new version. Thank you. But I'm not quite sure if Kun Mot was sentenced to jail because of this or not.
Yes. I think this Dr. Phongpait's earlier one, I think,
that's right.
uses Gosoro Gulab's genealogy to trace the family right back to the beginning in the Narai. But that's, for the female line. Yes.
Oh, yes.
So that I've seen that. Yes.
Okay. I will give you a copy.
Oh, I love it. Yes. I mean, there is quite a lot more in the article about the family, which I cut out from this presentation for reasons of time. But it is fascinating. And perhaps one of the most fascinating bits, and that this is in Dr. Phongpait's book, is the grant of the surname. Because, I mean, Amatyakul, which is, if you like, it is the lineage of Amat, of the high nobles. So for a family originally of Chinese origin, which for several generations has been trying to become Kun Nang, to get this surname is, the crowning glory. And there's some interesting dissent within the family also, which appears in these books too.
Thank you, Ajahn.
May I ask a question to you? I have often wonder this name นายโหมดชื่อจริงๆก็ชื่ออะไรเพราะภาษาไทยโหมดมีคำหมายไหมคะ
ตามที่ดูนะคะ
ไม่ใช่มดใช่ไหม
ไม่ใช่ค่ะโหมดสระโอหอหีบมอม้าดอเด็กค่ะ and also the first name
แปลว่าอะไรคะ
โอ้ยังไม่ได้ค้นเลยค่ะอาจารย์ เดี๋ยวต้องขอไปค้นด้วยค่ะก็พยายามหาหนังสืออ่านอยู่เยอะๆเลยค่ะแต่ว่ายังไม่พบตรงนี้ค่ะเดี๋ยวหนูหาให้and is another information is about สำอางค่ะก็เป็นชื่อของพระปรีชากลการด้วยเช่นกัน the first name ค่ะก็ไม่ทราบว่ามาจากอย่างไรค่ะเดี๋ยวไปสอบถามคุยมาให้ด้วยค่ะ
แต่ก็จะเล่าให้ฟังนิดนึงคือว่าเมื่อเราไปที่วัดเนี่ยนะคะก็ปรากฏว่าคือเจ้าพ่อสำอางนี่ก็เป็นที่เคารพนับถือนะคะแล้วก็ ฮะแล้วก็จะมีผู้คนมาเป็นสถานที่ที่ผู้คนจะไปขอพรนะคะดิฉันก็ไปขอพรไว้ด้วย แล้วก็แกก็ขอโฆษณาเกี่ยวกับปราจีนบุรีด้วยก็คือว่าเราไปนี่เราก็เลยไปพบว่าปราจีนบุรีเป็นเมืองที่น่ารักทีเดียวแหละจริงๆแล้วก็อยู่ไม่ไกลกรุงเทพนะคะแล้วก็มีพิพิธภัณฑ์ที่เรียกว่าเพราะว่าปราจีนบุรีนี่เป็นเมืองเก่าแล้วก็เคยมีการขุดค้นนะคะมีการขุดลงไปแล้วพบอาร์ติแฟกต์จำนวนมากที่มีค่ามากเลยแล้วก็มีพระที่งามมากเลยค่ะคือเราไปนั่งชมอยู่เนี่ยนะคะแล้วก็คือไม่เคยเห็นพระที่งามเท่านี้เลยนะคะที่ทำจากหินทรายแล้วผิวเนี่ยเหมือนผิวคนเลยค่ะนั่งดูอยู่เนี่ยนะคะแล้วก็ไม่ค่อยมีคนไปดูไปเท่าไหร่นะคะแล้วก็มีร้านอาหารอยู่ใกล้ๆด้วยเราก็หลังจากนั้นเราก็อาจารย์ก็ไปค้นว่าหลังจากนั้นเราจะไปกินข้าวกลางวันที่ไหนก็ปรากฏว่ามีร้านอาหารอยู่ริมแม่น้ำปราจีนมั้งนะคะอยู่ริมแม่น้ำพอดีเลยนะคะแล้วก็ร้านนี้ก็ไปคุยกันแล้วก็ปรากฏว่าเขาได้อาหารผักต่างๆที่ทำที่นั่นเนี่ยเขาปลูกสมุนไพรแล้วก็ผักต่างๆเป็นพิเศษที่ไม่ใช้สารพิษนะฮะแล้วก็คราวหน้าเราคิดว่าถ้าเราไปเราจะไปขอดูบอกเขาไว้ว่าจะขอไปแวะเยี่ยมสวนอันนี้นะคะแล้วเขาก็มีอาหารที่ทำจากผักที่เขาได้มาเนี่ยแล้วก็มีของหลายอย่างที่เขาก็ขายด้วยก็มาโฆษณาให้ด้วย แล้วอาหารอร่อยมากเลยค่ะ
Any more question or comments นี่ข้างหน้านี่
ขอบคุณครับ thank you thank you for a very interesting lecture I'm interested in Bradley's account of Kun Wongsa's statement that the king was displeased with the persons so that was quite deliberate to have the plural form so I wonder if anyone else was came under the king's displeasure in addition to Naimod and also about Naimod himself like if there is any indication that he has been at the king's displeasure before this incident because he was not promoted after becoming the page right so I wonder if being the Renaissance man was not quite doesn't play well with King Rama III.
On whether anyone else, I mean, obviously, the printing process would have involved quite a large number of people, because remember, we're not typing into our laptops. We are setting cold type, right? It took the typesetting for one of the volumes took a year, took a whole year, okay? Because 330 pages, each one has got a tray with the type set into it. So there would have been several other people. There have been several people involved in the actual printing, but the entrepreneur, is, as it were, the leader of the project, was very clearly Naimod himself. And none of the other persons are named. So I'm not sure whether we should make too much of that S. It could be just, it's in the way Bradley was writing down his diary, persons. I'm not sure there's all that much meaning. There's no trace of that I've seen of him getting into trouble at all earlier in the reign of Rama III. He seems to have enjoyed himself by learning all these things from the Westerners, by dabbling in making lathes and electroplating this and so on and so forth. And he did the other thing, which almost all the male members of the Amatyakul lineage seems to have done, is have very large number of wives and produce a very large number of children. So I can't remember how many he had by the time he comes up, but I think it's about 8 wives and 12 children or something like that. So I think that's what he... So he was doing this, he was learning, he was helping members of his family to build houses and this sort of thing. So I don't think he was getting himself into trouble.
ข้างหน้าอ๋อโอเคอาจารย์ธเนศ first.
Okay. Well, first, thank you, Chris and Ajahn Pasuk, for doing this wonderful, research into the story of Nai Mot. I totally forgot, except the burning of the 3-0 or any opinions, that Chris put, and he sent me the draft article, and then the last group that made opinion was my group, that I was included. So I was surprised. I totally forgot, that I did that, opinion. Also, so I'm not defending, but just explaining how our group, that's come from the book Siam Pimpakan in Thai. And that book, actually it started by Sujit Wongtet, the founder of Silapa Vattanatham magazine. So he already got, or the group, to do this research on a history of printing in Siam, from late Ayutthaya down to the present. And then said, he asked me to chair the group that, okay, we have researcher, we have writer, we have journalist, but they don't know how to make a kind of, theoretical statement about the book. He wants the book to be like more, a scholar, So I will share the discussion of the research every time, So that's why we came up that one. So the group will have Pramin Kruthong. He is a veteran and well-known, independent scholar, of Thai history. And then Kun Paul Bunnak, journalist, newspaper, also old hands, a veteran, of the Thai history, his name is Payuk Bunnak, and Ajahn Nipaporn from history at Thammasat, So after listening to all this research, and then they gather all evidence, and then we make our, conclusion. So what was that? Why it happened that, So I don't know why we came out to that one that you mentioned, that we suspect that the King Rama III probably, had something to do with the missionaries, that time, so make the case of Nai Mot, to kind of, a way, to dealing with the Western American, most American missionaries later, So I cannot explain, but probably, I will agree with all of the evidence, that there's something, influenced, Rama III, and then if we remember, Rama III always left his legacy, and become popular. Remember the last word before his dying bed, From now on, the wars with the East or something in the neighbor, not going to be the issue. Next will come from the West. So we have to learn from the West, but don't follow them. We have to be on our own. And ever since that word became, the key word for Thai foreign affairs until now. But the same thing, where is the reference? No. Until now, no one can get it evidence. But everyone believes that this is the word from King Rama III. A very wonderful word, right? Yeah. Okay. So that's the background of, of Christian discovery. Thank you for wonderful research, then put this story, into, I think, the proper, perspective, So if I want to add one last, my new opinion, this is on my own, not for my team, because we just discovered this now, Because after reading, the story of Nai Mot, we learned that the family been executed because of corruption cases after they've been doing mining and coining and do a lot of things, I consider Mot, to be the first, Thai, like a technician, okay? And with his money and capital and know-how, and position in the government, if Siam, starting the so-called economic development following the capitalist development, capital and technology, going to be the investment there, and industrialization, by the Thai capital, going to be something going to happen much better than what we had now. This last opinion I got from Japanese economic historian Suehiro Akira, he compared with Japanese capitalist development, and he said the Thai capitalist came from the merchant capital, the old-fashioned Chinese family. They import things from Western or from manufacturing, and then when Sarit promote industry, they simply build industry based on the subsidy import industry. So they never made anything new. They never had the industry. But Japanese capital started with their own money and their own technology. So that's what Suehiro said. That's a big difference between Japanese capitalists and Thai capitalists. We don't have technology, even nowadays. Thank you.
Yeah, I just like to add another information. When I talk to the abbots about Mot, and I asked him about the Mueang Thong, and the abbot said actually by that time the Mueang Thong, the gold mine, is not that important because it's been exhausted, because people have been mining it long time before the king got the idea of doing it and get Mot to continue. And when he came to it, it's right at the end of it already. And so this question of corruption is also debatable. The issue of corruption is also debatable. And the people around there loved him, They talk about him very fondly. But of course, with the word เจ้าพ่อสำอางก็เลยทำให้คนกรุงเทพนักข่าวกรุงเทพก็ไป propose ว่าเจ้าพ่อคำว่าเจ้าพ่อที่ใช้เนี่ยเริ่มแรกคงจะมาจากที่ประจินบุรี but I'm not so sure about that because เจ้าพ่อ is a very general kind of word anyway. But and we were told also that he had some of his เหลนเดี๋ยวเหลนโหลนนี่ยังมีอยู่ที่นั่นนะฮะแล้วก็เขาก็มาช่วยดูแลthe shrine, and the shrine is very well respected, very nicely kept.
They still apparently have an event on the anniversary of the execution in November. I don't think they have it every year, but they have had it sometimes. And there are a couple of master's theses written specifically about this, the way he becomes the Jiaopo Sam'ang in Pachinburi.
Well, you see, I think in the first or second year of the new shrine, which were made by the Tesabban, which is near the temple, but the big one, and the Tesabban is looking after it. ก็ได้รับฟังมาว่าก็มีคนถูกรางวัลที่ 2 แล้วก็ แต่พระสุขยังไม่ได้ไปขอ
Thank you for Ajahn Chris, Ajahn Pasuk. It's very hard for a Chinese student to talk with you guys face to face, And can I ask about the Three Seas law itself? Because I am so interested in the ดันเนินนาพลเมืองกับทหารแล้วก็ I want to ask it's exactly according to the king ตราโลก period หรือว่า law หนึ่งเขา revise a lot because you know Ayutthaya was destroyed by Burma แล้วก็ก็ไม่มีเอกสารสืบมาแล้วก็เขาทำกฎหมายตราสารตัวยังไง Okay. And also in the ดันเนินนาพลเรือนเขาใช้ภาษาเขมรlike they use อกยา instead of พยาแล้วก็ I want to ask if Nai Mot revise some Thai words because at that time it's not standard Thai at that time and also another wondering is Nai Mot น่าจะมาจากภาษาเต้จิ๋วไหมครับใช่มดอันนี้ไม่แน่ใจครับน่าจะlike ice also ออกเสียงมด I don't know I just guess I just guess. Thank you.
There is this issue of whether the laws were changed, whether Rama I changed the laws which he collected in 1805. And there's a second question whether it was changed then when it was printed. There's no, as it were, systematic changes when it's printed. They have to make differences in some of the spelling because there's certain things, certain characters that don't appear in a modern keyboard, so you have to have workarounds for that. But it's done very systematically. So Nai Mot doesn't change anything of the text. He changes some things in the organization of the whole collection of laws, which are interesting. And you have to wait till we publish the laws to see that, because it takes a long time to explain. The issue of whether Rama I changed a lot of things and introduced a lot has been a big controversy. And it's been particularly because Robert Lingat, who edited the Thammasat University edition, wrote an article in 1928-29 saying he must have changed a lot. Probably changed the whole thing, sort of as it were, okay? But if you think about it, and there's two things. One, if you then actually go and, as we have done, spent 10 years looking at this stuff, what you see is it's a big jumble. It's not something that has obviously been planned and put together like a law code. It's a collection from an archive, stuff that's accumulated over centuries. There's a lot of mistakes, there's a lot of repetition, which would have been cut out. So it doesn't look like something that's been substantially edited in 1805. Also, the team put together for this was 11 persons. They finished the job in 11 months. And I can't remember how many folds of the calculation is. We've got the calculation there. They were doing about 20 folds of Samut Thai per day, right? Did they have time to change anything? Did they have to correct it to make it to be correct according to the Pali, as the king says in his preface? No, they didn't have enough time. All they had time to do, collect it together, copy it out, proofread it 3 times, and get it out nicely written. So I don't think they changed anything significant in 1805. Maybe little things, but I don't think they changed anything significant at all. And yes, of course, and there is one decree where King Rama I says in a conversation which gets reported in a decree that when the Burmese came, they destroyed so many things that perhaps up to 90% of the laws were lost and only 10% remain. But I think what that doesn't mean 10% of the corpus, means 10% of them with all the copies, right? Because if you think about it, this law code, which comes out as about 350,000 words, whether you count in Thai words or English words. I mean, you're talking about, much, much, much longer than the laws of Manu, the Indian, much longer than the Indian Dhammasastra. If the original had been 10 times that size, which means 3.5 million words, or something like that, right? It's sort of impossible to imagine it was that big. So I don't think it means that a lot was lost. I think the fact that so much survived indicates they had very good backup systems, right? Yeah. They had it stored away somewhere so that it didn't all get burnt away. Of course, some would have been lost, but the amount that there has survived is quite fantastic, really.
But what we have found really that it's not an ordinary law code that we will understand the way it's being done in the ระบบกฎหมายนะคะ It's full of sayings, it's full of observations about lives, ordinary lives, and the practice of various things, and some of them are almost like a collection of not only about the happenings, the cases that happen, but it's the lives of people and how it happened and how it should be or what it has always been, and it's been recorded just like that, which meant that it's much more valuable than just being a law code.
There's some of the older stuff, particularly some of the phrasing is quite entertaining. There's quite a lot of jokes. There's bits of it that suddenly become poetry, are in verse. And just as one simple example of the kind of wit in some of them, there's a law that says if a man catches his wife in bed with a man, right, in flagrante delicto in the modern terms. How is that said in Thai? If the husband catches his wife with the wife laying face up and the man laying face down, come on! It's so funny. There's a lot like that. And I think it's partly because this wasn't only used to sort of help judge law cases, it was also used educationally as well. Right. We know, for instance, from Kunchan Kunpan, that when Kunpan is training, his son is training up to be a Kunnan, what he has to do is go and read the laws, which are stacked in the cabinet. So they're written in some ways to be quite much more approachable. They're not in fancy language. We get the impression they're all in Pali. There's not. There's almost no Palified words in the laws themselves. In the prefaces, which are probably written later, yes, but they're much more folksy and down to earth. Yeah.
And there's a lot of proverbs and like teaching the young people in very funny ways and very delightful. จำได้ไหมอันที่บอกว่าเมื่อ when if the young guy ran away with the girl, don't worry. If the child came, nobody will pay attention.
It says the parents, of the girl, if she runs away with a man, they mustn't get too angry at this, because of course later on when they have grandchildren they're going to love them.
or and if you can be clever with birds, but be careful. But be careful. If you are too clever with birds, it can have consequence, because it's like you can climb up the tree.
It says a slip of it's funnier in Thai, but I can't remember. A slip of the tongue can cause a loss of wealth, like a slip of the feet causes you to fall out of a tree. And it's very funny.
It's very funny in Thai คือตก
I can't remember.
ตกคล้ายๆกับว่าตกคำพูดผิดก็อย่างหนึ่งแต่ว่าถ้าเผื่อว่าพูดผิดที่เรื่องสำคัญก็เหมือนกับตก you can fall out of the tree and hurt yourself ตกต้นไม้
Any question please
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ajahn Pasuk and Ajahn Chris, for very fascinating presentation. I like the ideas you present. The pendulum life of the pioneer of modernity. That's a fascinating way of putting it. You can interweave these stories to several people who are pioneers of modernities in Thailand. So to offer you an answer for the paintings of Montigny Oral Audience, the original painting is located in the throne hall of Chakri Mahaprasad throne hall. Yes, it's now located in that room. And also I'm curious regarding the issue of authorship when you mentioned Bradley's account, when he said like Rama III displeased with persons who publish and sell them. So I was wondering, because the ideas of authorship, of course, in Siam wouldn't be the same as the ideas of the authorship in European sense and Renaissance sense, to put it simply. So I'm curious, what do you think about this issue? Is it because the issue of ownership comes with the questions of who owns? So my speculation is that the question of who owns comes just after the event. It's because of the event is the disruption, and then there was the issue of who owned instead of Rama III realized at first place that who owns, and then this would have significance to modern law, because modern law, the effectiveness of modern law comes with publicity. And would you say that the event of Mot Amatyakul introduced the separations of private and public sphere, and then it comes with the question of who owns?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's the printing part is important, because, as we have said, there was no problem about scribes going and making a copy of this law. That's no problem. There's no issue about that. But printing, which introduces the mass element and capital, right, and profit in a very big way, completely, I think, changes the equation there. So. Yeah. Yes, exactly. The timing of this. I mean, who knows really? Yeah.
okay
I sort of felt that the king would, you see, things that come out of the palace would belong to the king, because the king is making the law. The king who is the one who made the law, so that in terms of copyright.
Yes, it only becomes an issue when you can print it, not when you can just scribally copy it.
Oh. Yeah, but when you to subscribe to it take a long time, and how to pay it is not clear. And even in that case, the king can also claim that you are not allowed to print without my permission. But since it can be written, he cannot prevent it.
one more question here.
Hello. Okay. So, after hearing about the copy of Mobadley, I really wonder, how did the copies of the law were passed around. Because like obviously Mobatle has got access to one, but like I think other people probably have access to them too. But like it would not be enough it would not be enough copies to be like accurate to what Naimos memoir says. Because like obviously if it had that many copies, there probably would be more surviving copies, and the story surrounding the event would probably be quite different and probably have say something about like some copies remaining. So I wonder how do you think that the copies were disseminated? I guess, yeah.
I mean, what Mot says at the end of his memoir is that King Mongkut said that he was going to distribute a copy to all of the courts, one copy to various of the courts, and to various officials, and then he gave the rest of them back to Mot, who sold them all. I mean, that's what he tells us, whether we believe him or not. But your question is, yes, surely if there were 200 copies around, we would have more surviving now. I would agree, except, can you show me a first edition copy of Bradley? Can you find one anywhere? I've been looking to see if anyone knows of a first edition 1863 copy of Bradley. All of the ones you get in libraries come from the ones that were printed in the 1890s. Huh? So these things rot and disappear rather successfully. And that this one has survived, has gone to cold France, where it has a better chance of surviving. Got stuck in a library. But yes, I suspect others will turn up, actually. They're just stuck away in a corner. Yeah. Yes.
Any last question or comment? Yes? No? I guess that's about it. So thank you very much, Chris and Ajahn Pasuk, for being the speakers for today's session. I'm very pleased that eventually, this year we can have an English-speaking session for the Literary Lounge, because we have sort of promised our members that we would have at least one English-speaking session. As Ajahn Chris mentioned early on, that he selected some of the books related to this talk, which some of which are displayed on your right, and some are displayed in a case upstairs. On third floor. So after the talk, you can go up and see the showcase. And also we have some of the books that we deselected from our collection, because they are duplicates for sale at the back. If you are interested, you can take a look and make a purchase. Next month, we still have another session, but it will be in Thai by Dr. Tet Bunnak on his search for the whale and crocodile letter, which he believes to have survived somewhere, but the search is still not successful. So stay tuned. But for today, thank you very much to you all in the audience as well. And once again, thank you, Dr. Chris and Ajahn Pasuk. Sawadee krap.
Thank you for coming.